desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences for so long now. Have you ever come across a chord chart that just really overwhelmed you because it had all kinds of crazy symbols on it and you didn't know what to play? I know that's happened to me, and I spent the time, eventually, figured out how to play all those chords, and it's been so worthwhile. So I'm gonna teach you how to decipher some of the more complicated chord symbols you might see on a chart so that you can play anything you wanna play. So I will say that in order to really follow along, you need some understanding of chords and scales, but I think that this will appeal to beginners and more advanced players. So let's dive in. So I've picked the song Desperado as my example because this one has some sevenths, it has some slash chords, and it has some normal chords. So the first thing is that we just start out with a C, which is awesome. It's a simple chord. Then we see something called a C7. This is where knowing your seventh chords becomes very important because there's three different kinds. So the C7, when you see a 7 beside a chord name, it means to play the dominant 7. So what you gotta do is you gotta find the 7th tone of that chord scale. So in this case, we have a C chord. The 7th tone in the C scale is B. Now, you should know that this is a major chord, and when you add that 7th tone of the major scale, you get something called a major 7th. So on a chord chart, you would see that as M-A-J with the number 7 beside it, and that tells you to build a major chord and add the 7th note of the major scale to that chord. When you don't see the M-A-J and you just see the 7 beside the chord name, it means take that major 7 and lower it a half step, and that gives you something called a dominant 7th, and it has kind of a bluesy feel. So major 7, M-A-J 7, dominant 7, C7. Okay, so that's this is just the first two chords of the song. So let's keep going. Then we have an F, just a normal F. Then we have an F with an M beside it. And that M stands for minor. So you take your major chord and you make it minor. So you want to know how to build major minor chords. We've got lessons for that here. But essentially, if we're in the major, you lower the 3rd tone a half step. Then we've got another C. And then we've got something awesome. We've got a slash chord. So this means you're going to play the first chord. You see the first chord name, which is G, over top of, so the slash can stand for over top of, the note B. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna play a G chord here and the note B in your left hand. And it creates this sense of lift. So you'll notice that in most cases with slash chords, what ends up happening is you're using that 3rd tone of the root position chord as your sort of highlighted tone. And you play that in the bass instead of the root. It's still a G chord, but the slash B kind of highlights that B. You can also look at it as a second inversion G chord. So when you see that, so I've got C, G slash B. So I'm gonna play a first inversion G chord here, and I'm gonna play B in my left. Now it's kind of abrupt, but I just wanted you to hear that highlighted tone. It'll sound more like this. Beautiful. Next we have an A, but we have an M and a 7 beside it. So all that means is minor 7. So build your A minor chord, find the 7th note of that A minor scale, and you've got your A minor 7. You can play it on top or you can play it just underneath the root like that. And that is all of the complicated chord symbols you're gonna find in this song. So I couldn't find a song that had every single complicated chord symbol known to man, so I'm just gonna quickly address the other two that are not in the song so that you know them and you're prepared. You might see something called a diminished 7 or a dim, D-I-M, with a 7 beside it. And that means to build a diminished chord, which is essentially just a stack of minor thirds. So you build a bunch of minor thirds and you've got it. It creates a lot of tension. It's a villainous sounding chord. So that's the diminished 7. And then finally, we've got something called a minor 7 flat 5. So you'll see the chord name. So let's go with D minor 7 flat 5. So you'll see the D, an M, a 7, a flat, and a 5. So you just do what the chord says. You build your D minor 7. That's our D minor 7, see? D minor scale. That's the 7th tone. Okay, that's the minor 7. Find the 5th, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the A, and just flatten it. Boom. Minor 7, flat 5. So now you know how to play all the complicated chords. It's time to go play some songs with complicated chords. So comment below, let me know what you think, and have fun playing songs. Desperado.